the southern winds will be greening up the bays, making the slot-sized red fishing on fire. In the freshwater, the deep water pattern is still the thing to do. Our guides are here with the 411, so sit back, relax, because it's time for the Texas Insider Fishing Report.
Welcome to the Texas Insider Fishing Report. Presented by Yamaha.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Texas Insider Fishing Report. Rick and I are back along with your captains and guides to give you the depths of summer guide to fishing, where everyone's main MO is avoiding that heat, right Rick? Well, catching fish.
You're absolutely right, but you know what? If you have a shade fin made by Taco, you can avoid the heat because you create your own shade.
Wherever you go, we're throwing shade. But before we head off into our first region, let's take a moment to say hi to Ray Rocher, who is manning the workbench today, filling in for Dave. Thanks for being here, Ray.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Can't wait to talk fishing.
Talk fishing. That's
what are we going to talk about over there, Ray? A little topwater action?
Topwater, yeah. We got rods, reels, and lures. We got it all covered.
Cool.
So organized. Look how nice and neat they are. Love that. Love that
Color
for you.
coordinated.
Okay, well, our guide in the Upper Fresh region is more than ready to get us on that weekend bite. So, Mike, tell us where it's hot.
Hey, guys. Awesome. Yeah, it's hot here. It's hot temperature-wise, and it's hot fishing-wise. But let's talk about bass fishing on Lake Fork. Level is 39634. Temperature is 88 to 93. Water clarity, 1 to 2 foot visibility. You know, everything's about the same, but I'm going to kind of try and flavor it up for you a little bit. Bass fishing is still great. Early morning topwater in the right spot with the walking bait, like the Berkeley Jaywalker or the El Chapo. The best colors are bone white, but believe it or not, the brim and or shad colors are catching them good too right now. You really want to hit the random shell bed main lake points down in the south end of the lake. Also, some of the points that have a little bit of standing timber are also holding fish. The real key is make sure they're wind blown. Once that sun gets up high, go looking for those bass getting deeper on the ridges, the humps, tree lines, and also deep shell beds, 18 to 22 feet. Push the football jigs, large worms, and even half-ounce shaky heads. Go a little heavier with the shaky head in that deeper water. But the big worms, your best colors are green pumpkin, always dip tail chartreuse, red bug, plum, and red shad. Also starting to see a thermocline. In these shallow lakes, that thermocline builds in around 22 feet. And you really got to pay attention. You're going to see the haze on your Garmin sonar. And you really want to make sure that if you're in those areas, fish above that haze or go find new water, because there's very limited oxygen in and below the thermocline here, and the fish just don't use it. So a lot of times I just go looking elsewhere, but I make sure that I'm fishing those humps, ridges, breaks above where I see that haze. Texoma bass fishing. Water temperatures high, 91, but green pumpkin jig still working well. The ultra speed vibe trailers, 12 to 20 feet. Shaky heads with ribbon tail worms, also another great way to catch them. And then you also might try some shaded boat slips with the Spro Rock Crawler in the color Cellmate, and or even a weighted Super Fluke. How about Lake Tawakoni? Tawakoni has still got a decent frog bite early and late. It's not an all-day bite anymore, but they're also being caught on swim baits or working around lily pads and vegetation. Once the sun gets high, go looking for some of the rip-rap rock piles and docks around 10 feet. Shaky heads, Texas rigs and jigs, and watermelon-colored baits. Again, with that dip tail chartreuse. There's something about dipping the tail chartreuse in northeast Texas. It's really important. Lake Ray Roberts. Water getting high there, up in the upper 80s. Frogs walking topwater baits in the morning near grass and vegetation, and then move deep, 18 plus with the deep jigs, sea rigs, shaky heads on offshore structure. I would say the big worms and creature baits are probably my favorite there. Green pumpkin and oxblood colors are working best. Lake Weatherford, one last bass lake for you. Shaky heads and drop shot rigs. The red bug finesse worm really working good there. Fish the rip wrap and rocky points also, but look for those random brush piles. Use your Garmin side scan, find those brush piles, and even some occasional docks if you can find ones with enough water. Let's go on. Actually, I think I got one more bass lake for you. Let's do Lake Levon. Carry Thorns. Black bass, they're still being caught at the 10 to 20 foot range. Same thing, brush piles, timber, and rocks. It's really important. And wind-blown paces are your best location. about some crappie fishing. Crappie with my favorite gal, Terry Moon, right here on the world famous Lake Fork. The crappie are hanging around main lake points 15 to 25 feet along tree lines, creek channels, brush piles. Their depth change throughout the day is really once the sun gets up, so kind of watch your graph. Those fish are moving around a little bit when the sun gets high. And Terry says she's also catching a lot of brim. She's really been having a good time catching brim, and they're super good eating. She's tight lining night crawlers right off the bottom, 4 to 10 feet of water. Those are excellent eating, as I said, and here's some great picks with Terry Moon.
Nice. All right, what else you got?
Let's skip on. I want to say a little bit about the stripers and hybrids. So let's go ahead. Stripers and hybrids on Tawakoni. Main lake temps 86, lake is 3 foot low. Kind of the same bite as before. The hybrids and sand bass are schooling in the mid-mornings on the humps in the south end of the lake. The smaller slabs and smaller topwater baits are your best bet. Here's a couple great picks with some beautiful hybrids and stripers and Matt Cartwright.
Nice.
Go, Matt.
Got
And
20 seconds
one
left,
more,
Mike.
Real quick.
Yep.
Lake Levon, they're scattered. They're all over the place, but you're relating to structure early morning and then out in the open water chasing bait. Just drive around until you see them surfacing. You get lucky and drive over them and see them with your Garmin sonar. And the same thing, slabs and top waters there for those hybrids, whites, and stripers.
All right, bud. Great report. Thanks for starting us off this week. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the upper fresh hot spots. He says the Lake Fork continues to be a hot destination in the upper fresh region, offering world-class trophy bass fishing, unbelievable summertime crappie fishing, and daily limits of pan-sized channel catfish. The weather is hot, so is the fishing.
So is the fishing. All right, we're staying north, but headed to the coast. So come along with us to the Fish Bites Upper Coast region, where Captain Carl Weston has us on the reds and trout inshore and the Dorado and snapper offshore. Sounds like a fun weekend, Carl.
Oh, it's been hot. It's been awesome. Water temp over in Trinity Bay is holding about 81 degrees. We've had a little rain recently. It's cooled it down a bit. The reds over there are really hitting on top water, silver spoons. They're like the bite is on there. The rain, we're supposed to have a little more this week, so it'll keep it down. But still, the middle of the day is, you want to stay away from it. Fish early, fish late for you and the fish. Over at Sabine Lake, the fishermen are catching their limits of redfish over there as well. I'm being told drifting over the oyster reefs with a popping cork is where it's at there. Bolivar, fishing is very good off the jetties and the shorelines. Use a Berkeley Magic Swim or a Chopo 90 in bone or white color. And over in Texas City, the redfish are being caught along the jetties, as usual, the shorelines as well on live or dead shad. Moses Lake is holding some real nice redfish this time of year. I would definitely try some Fish Bites, Easy Shrimp in pink. It's bright. They can see it. They can smell it, taste it. It's definitely, use it on a Carolina rig. It's the way we fish it, and it's been working well in the past week or two. We have a picture today of Mike and Brandon Castor enjoying a good father-daughter day of red fishing. And
Awesome.
Moving over to trout, guys, the trout bite is on as well. The hot weather is here, and the bite is hot in the upper coast. We're having triple-digit days, and, man, it's been hot. Like everyone has said, thank goodness for the shade fin we talked about earlier from Taco Marine. I know that you can fit 4 to 5 people under it because every day that's how many people huddle under mine. And so over in the oyster reefs in the middle of Galveston Bay has been a really good spot for trout. The action, once again, early in the morning, late in the evening is good. The Fight Club shrimp on a quarter-ounce jig head is working there as well. Shrimp or small croaker on a popping cork is your best live bait option if you're going that route. And the trout are coming in, schooling around the rocks at the Texas City Dike. They're chasing bait there. Fish those potholes around Email Cut to empty into the bigger bays, and they're really good as well. And today we have a picture of Brandon with a table full of trout there, guy.
Nice. All right, let's go offshore, bub.
Well, you know what? If you like Dorado, this is probably the best year I've seen in the upper coast that I can remember. Don't pass it up. The weed lines are forming out there. Some of the best conditions we've seen here, like I said, in a long time. Right now, the 200-foot depths are some really beautiful blue water pushing in from the east. And as you know, the weeds and debris are always right there in those current breaks. Finding bait along these weed lines is going to be your telltale sign that there's a lot going on underneath those little mats. The birds are watching for the bait; they're dipping. Keep an eye on the sky for those. Trolling is a must on these. Watch your speed. keep your range 6 to 8 knots, and finding your speed sweet spot. Maybe a little quicker one day. As soon as you get strikes, lock in there. We've been hooking up on smaller baits in our spread. Good addition is the R&R Tackle Mahi Magnet, the 4 3/4 lens in green and yellow. Man, they love that color. And Miss Nancy here with her first Dorado. We got a picture of her with her first Dorado today.
All right.
So,
Congrats.
back to snapper, guys. And we're a little bit halfway through the season. The fish are in big schools, but once again, it's weird. We're having a hard time catching the bigger fish this year. A lot of small fish, which is probably great for the future of the fishery, but you're having to battle through and cull through some smaller fish to get the bigger ones. But in the 130 to 300 foot range, seems to be the bigger fish. Using a whole squid is always good. Use bigger bait, you're going to catch bigger fish. And as usual, we're still tipping all of our first thing goes on the hook is a piece of fish bite. So when they suck that soft squid off, you're still going to get a second or third bite. And a lot of times you'll get on a spot that's I think you can chum them up, throw a chum bag out, and we'll use a R&R bucktail with light tackle. And man, we've had a blast with that. And they're easier because you don't have to vent the fish as much. They'll swim right back down. You don't even have to just unhook them and let them go. And we have a picture today of Mark and Dylan, a father and son team, hitting the snapper spot this week.
All right, Bub. Really good. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the R&R tackle hotspots from the Upper Coast region. Carl says inshore, chasing the redfish and bullava off of the jetties and shorelines using hard plastics such as Berkeley, Chapos, and Bone. And then offshore, troll for Dorado in the current breaks and weed lines with green and yellow R&R Mahi magnets, just like his report.
Just like it. I love seeing the parents out there with their kids. Did you see that? There were two.
See that.
Father and daughter, father, son. Love it. Get those kids out there. All right, look alive, friends. We're headed down to the lower fresh region coming right up. But first, Ray, I hear him over there. He's giving us some rigs and techniques at the Workbench. What we got over there, Mr. Ray Rocher?
Chapos on the left, Chapos on the right. Got lots of Chapos.
That's it.
Chapos for days.
Beautiful book.
Here we come, Chapo.
That's it.
We'll be back.
The Texas Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. Fenwick. Feel everything. Bajio Sunglasses. Blue light blocking. Radically clear lenses. Garmin. Plot your paradise. Fibertex. Leaders in fiberglass fabrication and repair. Sportsman's Adventures. Fishing for adventure. Berkeley. Your fish, our science. And Skeeter Performance Fishing Boats. Eat, sleep, fish.
Well, we're here at the Workbench. As you can see, Dave is out this week. My good buddy Ray Rocher has come in to help us. Ray, we were talking earlier before the show, and a lot of us, our first fish that we ever caught, we caught a bass.
On top water.
Yeah, I mean, you were telling me one weekend you really had a great bass bite going on. How many did you catch in one day? Or in a weekend?
508.
508
Not
bass.
that I remember.
Not that you remember. You got to remember that. So, I thought it would be...
It's where we all started.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think even though you're an offshore specialist, that really made an effect on you because of being able to understand how the fish
react. Yep.
So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about, I like fishing with this Fenwick 7.5 foot HMG inshore. It's a great plug rod. It allows me with 7.5 feet to throw a long way. I've loaded this pin fathom reel up with some Diamond 20 pound and the 20 pound braid. And the reason why I like that so much, and it has a split handle grip, is because when we're top water fishing, a lot of times we need to be able to have some sensitivity in the rod tip. But the cadence offshore, tell me how you would like to throw. Like if we were fishing, this big Chapo was designed for throwing to tunas, just like the cane walker comes in two sizes.
Yep.
What would you do if you were throwing this to tunas?
Biggest difference is speed and cadence. You can't really outwind them, right? They're so fast. the best thing you can do is pull as fast as you can, and that really, talk about reaction, makes them react to that and bite just because of the way they're used to pursuing. You don't see a flying fish taking off lazy, right? You don't see a ballad who's skipping on the surface slowly.
Right.
So in the blue water, you're dealing with fish that are built for speed. So that affects how you fish.
So you could pop it as fast as you could go. With the Chapo, with the propeller, you're gonna throw it out and reel it as fast as you can. And it doesn't matter whether it's a pilchard color or a flying fish color, mullet color.
They're usually silhouetting in that case anyways.
Exactly.
Yep.
But if we're in the world of inshore fishing where I, specialize, then we're talking about a saltwater fish doesn't want his bait to stop.
Yep.
So whether it's a big trout or big redfish, whether it's in the flats or up in the marsh, we're going to make sure that we continue to work that lure. And I think it's really important for it to walk the dog. And remember this, guys, when you're walking the dog, if you reel too fast, then you don't have enough slack
Left
to
to right.
allow it to go left and right.
Yeah.
Versus in bass fishing, Ray, that day that you're talking about, what did you learn?
Just learn sometimes they like a pause. Sometimes those fish, many times, would eat that, you'd pop it and just let it sit. You'd see the fish rise. And sometimes when so you would experiment, and that's how you really understand how the different species in different conditions, water clarity, et cetera, affect how you retrieve or how slow you might retrieve.
Right. Yeah. So like a good example, if you're fishing a rubber frog, even though that's a topwater animal, it's a soft plastic, you're going to pop it and make those little legs gurgle, but then it's pause, and sometimes 5 or 6 seconds.
That's right.
In fresh water, you think it's important to, when you make the cast, to let it sit for a second before and let the ring of fire dissipate?
Absolutely, 100%.
Guys, these are some tricks that you need to apply, whether you're freshwater fishing or even saltwater fishing. When it hits and you throw to a school of redfish that you've just rupted, which is reconnaissance under power, where they heard the boat company and they raised up, you throw in there and twitch it as fast as you can, just like if you're throwing into tunas busting on the surface.
Yep. A lot of it is watch their prey too. If you ever see, whether it's a frog or whatever it is that they're eating, minnows coming out, bottom line is watch how they react. And also I always say failure teaches me the most. When I'm not getting bit, I change something and hopefully create success, and that teaches you a lot.
That's good advice. In the hybrids we're forgetting, certainly early in the morning with topwaters, a chrome colored, something matches a shad, the pilchard color like this would certainly be a really good one. Now remember, guys, there's also some of these topwater lures, they have a flat nose, as you can tell by this hijacker. So when you're working it, as you pop it, it actually has a pop sound, a gurgle, like a popping cork, plus you get the benefit of having that walk the dog 180 degrees. In saltwater, if he comes up and blows up on it and misses it, speed it up, twitch it a little faster. If a bass misses it, you're gonna let him get it. Pause.
Yeah.
All right, it's all in how you wiggle your worm, guys. Don't forget that.
Absolutely, and I think that's the hardest part about it is pausing and being patient.
Yep.
Because you're just so excited to get that bite, but you got to do that to get that bite. All right, the big ones keep on coming in the lower fresh region. So let's see where on Lake Falcon, Choke Canyon, Fayette County, and Lake Amistad with Matt Reed. Go for it, Matt.
All right, Brie, let's get this thing rolling. As always, I'm going to start off with a bass report. Falcon Lake has been on fire in 2 ways lately, the fishing and the temperature. It's been brutally hot, but the fishing has just been great. Water's extremely low down there right now, so you need to be careful launching. We're launching the boats from the shore down at the state park. You need to find a rocky area where you can back in. There's several little areas that you can do that. You can back in, not get your wheels in the water, and you can launch just fine. The bass are using the rock drops and brush piles in that 10 to 18 feet of water range. Our best bite has been on a Texas rig 10-inch plum worm or a stand-up head with the same type of, plum colored worm, but better with a big straight tail on the stand-up head. Also, after you've caught them on the plastics and they slow down, pick up your big crankbait in a chartreuse pattern, throw it back to the same areas
and you can fire them back up and add fish to your creel out of each spot. It just tends to fire them back up and let you catch some more. Mike Bates has sent me a report from Choke Canyon. This week, he says the topwater bite has been extremely good, both on the inside and outside hydrilla lines. The bite is lasting until about 8:30 or 9 o'clock on the topwaters. Then after that, you want to throw a moving bait, either chatterbait, spinnerbait, or square bill. Also, some swim baits. Everything in shad pattern is what's working on the moving baits around the grass. The fish are really bunched up in small spots. He says he caught 30 plus in less than an hour out of a spot the size of his boat. So when you find them where the food are, they're really bunched up. The hot weather is not bothering them at all for feeding. The hydrilla punching bite is just really on fire. Find you some matted grass, concentrate on the thick, different shaped parts, the points and cuts on the outside edge. Get you a 1 ounce weight with your plastics and braided line, drop it through the mats, bounce it a couple times, feed them, do it again. When you find them, they'll be grouped up. That bite is best on clear days with no wind when it's really hot. This week he's had bass up to 8 pounds with a half-day trip averaging in the 50 to 60 fish range. Greg Boink sent me a report from Fayette County. It's been very good this week. Night fishing, he's avoiding the heat. We've had a good moon this week. It'll be tailing off, but you'll still have plenty of light. That nighttime bite is best on plastics and spinner baits. There's a minor feed right now in the middle of the day coming in behind that moon. He's catching those in that 17 to 28 feet of water on Carolina rigged worms. Red bug and green pumpkin has been the best colors. A few fish are showing up in the hot water discharge as well. Lake Amistad is also fishing really well. The common theme right now in South Texas is extremely low water and a great bite. Be really careful navigating on Lake Amistad because it has a lot of real steep rock formations, and some of them, now you can be running in 50 or 60 foot of water and then being 6 inches in just a second. So be real cautious. You can catch them early on top waters around the grass, a little later on Texas rigs around that grass also. But the best bite for big ones is moving out on the deeper rock points and drops in that 15 to 40 foot range. A football jig or a drop shot are your best weapons. Been several really big fish caught down there lately. Overall, the bite is great in South Texas. It's really definitely worth braving the heat right now. But remember to stay hydrated. It takes me about 2 gallons of water a day to keep up. So don't get dehydrated because it'll knock you down. I got a picture of 4 bass from my trips at Falcon this week. Every one of those fish are great fish. Got Randy, me, Pato, and Ron with just an example of a fish from 4 different days. It's just been crazy lately with the amount of big ones we've been catching.
Yeah, I'm
Rick's
over here.
shaking
I'm
his
over
head
here
again.
shaking my head, man. You're always good for a head shake in this studio, bub. All right, tell us about the white bass.
Let's go to the white bass and hybrids. Lake Somerville has been really good for white bass and hybrids out on the main lake points. 1 ounce slab spoons and white or chartreuse have been best when they're down. You can also catch them when they're down, trolling a crankbait with a little bitty pet spoon behind it along the dam. When they're busting the top, you can catch them on a walking bait like the hijacker. That's always a great fun bite when they're busted on top.
All right, man. Well, thank you for keeping us rolling, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at the FiberTech hotspots from the Lower Fresh region. My man says it's hard to pick one South Texas lake to highlight right now, as the bass bite is good on nearly all of them. The common denominator are the deep drops and brush piles that concentrate on them with Texas rigs, jigs, and crankbaits to have you some good old fun.
The other common denominator is that Rick's not on them either.
Oh, that's so mean.
So funny though.
You get a mean streak after she had
I
that
don't.
second baby.
It's just funny. It's just funny. All right, the Star Charm Middle Fresh and Garmin Middle Coast regions have a lot to share with us for your dog days of the upcoming summer weekend, so stay hooked and remember to keep up with everything fishing in Texas. Make sure to head on over to our website, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and to see new fishing adventures along with reports, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Captain Rick Murphy. We'll be right back.
The Texas Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Bass Assassin and Saltwater Assassin, the best lures, period. Island Lures, Tournament Tackle. Rodan, set it, forget it, catch more fish. Sirius XM Marine, weather, fish mapping, entertainment. Shallow Sport, Berkeley, your fish, our science. Murphy's Law Sport Fishing. Book your trip today at murphyslawsportfishing.com. And Penn, let the battle begin.
Today's power pole tip of the week is becoming more stealth with your poles. Now guys, think about this. We have 3 speeds on our power poles, and the one thing that we need to understand is that we can manipulate those speeds. We can go fast, medium, or stealth mode. Now whenever I'm making a move from an oyster bar over to a point, and I know I'm only going to pick up the poles a few inches at a time, I simply click it into the stealth mode so that I can keep the noise level down to a very, very quiet approach. Now you guys that love to bass fish and you're fishing fish that are on beds, that approach is the same thing. Make sure that you go into the stealth mode so that you can sneak up on those beds, put your poles down, and the bass doesn't know you're there. Keep in mind that by simply manipulating the speeds through your multifunction switch or through the app using the key fob, this will make a great approach, and that's today's power pole tip of the week. You know, Brie, when you're going along and you're only making little movements, 50 feet here, 100 feet there, there's no need to have to bring your poles all the way back up. The trolling motor doesn't know that they're down. You just lift them up about this much and put it in. By putting in the low speed, you don't have hardly any sound whatsoever. And it does, you know, so you're only moving them up this much.
Power poles are a game changer.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're getting back to our Startron Middle Fresh Region report, and things are looking good on Richland Chambers, Toledo Bend, and Sam Rayburn. So let's get with Matt Loescher and learn how we're beating the heat and getting the bite. Go for it, Matt.
All right, Bree. Yeah, it is hot, but thankfully we're still catching some fish, so it's still worth getting out there. I'm going to start out this week talking about bass fishing up on Richland Chambers, starting up at the north end of the region this week with Mr. Thurman Selman with Bass and Specialty Guide Service. You know, he's always keeping us informed on those fish. He says that right now the lake's about 5 feet low and the water temperature has crept all the way up into the mid-90s on some hot days. But despite that heat, he is still catching some fish. He's finding them in about 15 to 20 feet of water around brush and rock piles. And his bait of choice is still that 11-inch Bass Assassin worm in the darker colors, and he's putting it on a Carolina rig. That's been a really good one for him the last few weeks. He's also catching some fish on a deep diving crankbait out off the point that has some rock piles on it. Now he says that the dock bite has really slacked off due to the lower water levels, but if you do know where some docks are that have a little bit of deeper water, you can still catch fish on those deeper docks that have some water around them. Using a shaky head with a Bass Assassin Little Tapper, also in a darker color like a black with blue tail or something like that. Now down here on Toledo Bend, we're seeing that warmer lower water as well. I've seen the water temp creep all the way up into the low 90s myself also, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The good news is the bass are bunching up in really big schools out in 10 to 20 feet of water. They're hanging out around the mouths of the creeks and the drains, and then out on some isolated high spots as well. Large shaky head worms like that Bass Assassin Tap Out are great right now, like the red bug color, and then your natural colors as well, like watermelon red and green pumpkin. Deep diving Berkeley crankbaits are also good, throwing them in the shad colors, especially when you start seeing those fish chasing the shad around. That's where the crankbait comes in. Now, I want to give a quick side note about this water level getting lower. You know, many people, they kind of tend to complain about lower water level for various reasons. Maybe their favorite boat ramp doesn't have enough water on it, or their dock's too shallow to use or something like that. And I understand all that, but y'all just please consider that the lower water level coupled with the warmer water temperatures that we're having right now and the long days, it's great for the growth of all the various aquatic vegetation species like hydrilla and coontail that us bass fishermen love to fish around. You know, these grasses provide excellent habitat for all of the fish species, and the future of our fishery really benefits from having that grass, because it harbors your smaller fish like bass fry and then the forage species as well. So long term, it does a lot of good. So please just be careful not to complain about the lower water levels. These cycles are just Mother Nature's way, and they're a necessary thing for the overall health of a fishery. And if you've been fishing Toledo Bend over the past decade or more, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. The years following that lower water level has been fantastic historically. Now, moving on over to Sam Rayburn for a minute. Kind of the same story. The water's about 3 foot below pool now, so those big fish will be stacking up more and more as it continues to drop. Once again, that lower water level is a great thing for the vegetation. The longer it stays down, the more benefit we're going to see in the future from it. On Rayburn, we've kind of been riding that last wave of that good grass crop that we had back in 2018, and floods since then have really decimated that grass. So I'm really hoping that this lower water level this summer is going to help getting it spread around the lake again. Now, as for what's happening right now over there, there's been a ton of big fish caught lately, and it's still the summertime staples that are putting them in the boat. Standard stuff like big crankbait, jigs, and Carolina rigs fished out deep around the humps and the ledges. That's what's doing the trick. So get out there, find you some good wood to fish them around, and you can put some really big fish in the boat right now with this lower water. Now, finishing up with the crappie this week, unfortunately the crappie bite has really slowed down on Toledo Bend this week. The fish have just received a ton of pressure this summer, and I believe it's kind of taken its toll. We are still catching a few, just nothing like it was in the weeks past. Now, this is kind of a typical summertime lull that we see at various times from year to year. It generally falls sometime between July and September. This year, we caught them really well early in the summer, so that's why I think we're seeing it happen earlier in July. But the good news is we're still catching enough good ones to make it interesting, and what we're catching them in is we're catching them around 15 to 30 foot of water out around the timber and the bridge pilings, mostly on live minnows. And I'm going to leave you with a photo of myself and my fellow guide, Mr. Jim Shanley, with a nice 2-boat catch of crappie there with a big group we had this week.
That is a good Ussie.
That is a great hat, too.
That's a good
Let
hat,
me know
too.
when you need more of those. Every one of those guys should be wearing one of those hats, my man.
You're right, they should.
All right, I'll send you a box. You can give them out till you run out. All right, bub, we'll see you later. Thank you. We're going to talk, check out the hot spots from the Rodan Marine Systems in the Middle Fresh region. He said big bass are being caught cranking and dragging bottom baits. Crappie have slowed down, but they are still fair on them minnows.
You get a hat, and you get a hat,
Everybody
and you get a
get a hat.
crappie, and you get a crappie.
That's it.
That was a nice mess of crappie right there.
It sure was.
All right, well, early bird gets the worm and doesn't break a sweat in the Garmin Middle Coast region. So let's see what we're catching with Captain Bink Grimes.
Yeah, there's been a lot of sweating going on lately. It's been hot. It's been early fishing pattern from the dock, and we're getting back to the cleaning table by about noon. So we're trying to beat the heat. The best bite's been early. West Matagorda Bay remains steady. The grass beds are holding good trout on the incoming tide on bass assassins, the Miralura soft tines, and sheep pups. Again, it's an early bite, so get out there early. Port O'Connor's been just as hot. Deep reefs, San Antonio Bay, much like East Bay, are holding trout on the ledges. There are hundreds of reefs in the middle of that bay, and many of those captains are just hopping from reef to reef. Got Lynn Smith, he's enjoyed waiting for trout on the incoming tide around Pascaval. A lot of those fish have been caught on topwaters as well, and a lot of, if you're willing to grind with those dog walkers, you can catch them. Spots like City Slickers, the Cedars, Old Coast Guard Station, they're holding good fish over sand and grass. There's been multiple 7 to 8 pound trout caught and released in East Matagorda Bay lately. Find a pile of shell in that 5 foot of water, soak a shrimp, and wait for the cork to get dunked. Raymond Shoals, Pipeline, the log, and the tripod have produced, even in our dingiest water. We've got low tides right now, and water temperatures about 85 degrees. Any kind of wind is kind of dirtying the water up, so we've been fishing a lot of streaky water. Waders, they've released the same size trout, working those mid-bay reefs like Half Moon, Three Beacon, and Drill's Lump. The key has been to leave early. Leave early before sunrise. Make your first cast as dawn's coming up. Rockport anglers have been teasing trout with Miralura Double Ds and Bass Assassins rigged on those Texas jig heads. Guts on the edge of that sand and grass flat are holding most of those trout. Topwaters have been solid around Super Flat and Mud Island. Redfish action improved this week. Lots of slot-sized reds have pulled off the shorelines, and there are a lot of them we'll find in the middle of East Matagorda Bay. The pattern's been to look for slicks and then drift behind them. When you get in a big herd, pow pole down, work that area. I've got dual 10-foot power poles, and man, it just holds me good in that 5 foot of water. There's been days when we've had all 3 rods bent at one time, and That's just this time of year in East Matagorda Bay. Our tides are lower, foot and a half low. Those fish have to come off the shorelines, and they're getting out there and over that deep shell. With Texas suffering from drought conditions most of the year, salinity levels are higher than normal. That's encouraged our redfish to seek shelter upstream of the Colorado River. Most of that's been we've been beating the banks with live shrimp and bass assassins. It's a good spot when the wind blows hard during the summertime. Get out there, you always got clean water. There's a lot of slat-sized reds at the Matagorda Jetty. This time of year, there's wads of big menhaden coming in offshore, and those redfish are right behind them. That same scenario is playing out in Freeport, Surfside, and the Porter Connor Jetty. Don't be surprised when you're catching those reds if a big trout shows up. They like those pogies as well. And don't be surprised if gulp trout show as well. They're hardy fighters, are good table fare. We've been, instead of keeping speckled trout here the last couple of years since the freeze, we've been, if people want to eat fish, we've been taking those Gulf trout, and man, they're really, really good. There's a photo there, redfish we found in the Colorado River last week. Like I said, we were beating the banks like we're bass fishing, throwing bass assassins and live shrimp, and doing pretty well. Offshore, that Gulf shrimp season opened this week, and it saw better action for kingfish because when those shrimp boats are out there working and culling, they're culling off the back of the boat, and a lot of those kingfish are just following them. So you can get right behind them with that drift and get on them. Guide Michael Quebec said there's a lot of weed lines, lots of Dorado, while trolling with ballyhoo and deep diving crankbaits. A lot of chicken dolphin out there as well on those weed lines. Those tarpon are beginning to show. We're getting our first little sign of tarpon right now because those rafts of menhaden are coming through there. It gets only better in August and September around here. So that's another solid week of fishing in the Garmin Middle Coast region. Keep taking care of our bays, please, and please release more than you take.
So, Bink, I got a question for you. We were looking at your report, and you talked about slicking, and one of the guys actually in the control room asked me, what does slicking mean? You want to explain that to people who don't know?
Yeah, sure. So it really happens with trout, and sometimes with redfish. When they're on oily bait fish, they're gorging all these big schools of menhaden and mullet, and they eat too much. And when they eat too much, they cough it up, they throw it up, and when they throw it up, that sheen of the bait fish, like a menhaden's got more oil in it than any fish, and it comes to the top just like you drop if you drop a spot of oil on top of the water, that sheen that's left there, that's what you're getting. And all that does is tell you that, man, those fish are there.
That's a natural chum slick and chum bag, I guess, of some sorts, right?
Pretty much so. And in tournament action, people that we knew were following us, we'd throw potato chips and Fritos out and form our own slicks out there to kind of keep them off our tails and our boat.
Man, you little sneaky booger there. All right, bub, well, thank you so much. We're going to continue this conversation offline when later on we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Mirror Lure hotspots right now for the Middle Coast region. He says trout are good at the city slickers near Port O'Connor on red shad and hot chicken bass assassins, and then redfish are best while drifting slicks in the middle of the East Matagorda Bay on shrimp. See, rich food ain't good for you. See all that?
You sneaky little bugger, you.
Oh, sneaky bugger.
That was really sweet. All right, we're gearing up for our Lower Coast Region report while Ray is gearing up for some new products at the Workbench. Ray, you've got some pretty cool things over there.
I got a great reel. I just need a rod.
Oh, well.
Oh, wait, we have a rod.
Oh, look at that.
I don't think those two are going to go
No, they ain't
together,
gonna
Ray.
go.
Look at that.
Lots of stuff here.
Lots of stuff to talk about. We'll be back.
Yes, we do.
The Texas Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Tin Cup Mountain Whiskey. Turn on the bite anytime. Tie on a Mirror Lure. Abu Garcia, Fish to Win. Ameritrail, load, launch, relax. Fenwick, feel everything. Diamond Fishing Products, our reputation is on the line. R&R Tackle, from our tackle box to yours. And Startron, start, run, and store with Startron.
So we're here at the Workbench. Time for the Taco Marine, trolling the edge, new products. And Ray, you're a Taco Pro staff. I know you love their products, but you're also an AFCO Pro staff. And I got to tell you, AFCO has done some great stuff for conservation.
Yes, they have.
So why don't we talk about the new book, Any Fish, Any Water? What do you know about it?
Jason just absolutely is a master of photography. I've filmed with him quite a bit. Jason Arnold is just at the top of his game, and he shared not only his kind of the story of his beginnings, but why this book means something to him. It's really to pass on to future generations the things that he loves, especially his son. And it's a really special book. The Shed family has done so much for conservation, donating 100% of the profits from this book to the CCA, which is just amazing.
You know what's so cool, Ray, is because of my passion for conservation in redfish and yours in sailfish, they have put us both in this book. First time for the two of us to actually be in the same book together. It's a really beautiful coffee table book, over 200 pictures. Scott Martin, you know, the Bass Pro, obviously he's in this because of all the stuff he does for bass fishing. Guys, I highly recommend that you get this book. It is an awesome book and goes for a good cause.
Yes, it does.
And I'd be willing to bet that because it's tied into conservation, you could probably write it off. So AFCO.com would be a good place. Yeah, try. All right, speaking of another great product, let's talk a little bit about the Authority 6500 that you have there, Ray.
Just a beast of a reel. CNC machine from one solid piece of metal. Stainless gears. I mean, it's the real deal, and built from a 2500 to a 10,500.
Correct.
So you can go anywhere in the world and catch fish with that reel in the toughest conditions. Heavy drag. They have the DuraDrag system that has some of the best washers and most durable drag systems. I know because I've been fishing them for probably 20 years and have kind of been a little bit involved in some of the designs, and it's just amazing the thought they put through these reels. I've said for years, even some of their reels before this one came out were much more capable than people realize. So they've just taken it to the next level.
Stainless steel gearing, the slammer drag system, the DuraDrag, as you said. What I love about it is 12+1 on the stainless steel ball bearings. They say that you can submerge the reel up to 30 feet.
Minutes at 1 meter. So 30 minutes at 1 meter, which what that really means is all those days when you're running offshore or inshore and you're getting spray on your tackle, you know, we're looking ahead. We're not really realizing what our reels are being subjected to. And in the old days, those reels would have gotten some salt water inside that reel, and you put it away for, you rinse the outside, you put it away for a week or two or a month or who knows how long.
Come back.
Not so good.
Not so good.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of real good, let's talk a little bit about the new Gulp Chrome baits from Berkeley, Ray.
Yep, they're special.
Yeah, so we got a variety of different shapes. This is the swimming mullet. It's a curly tail. I was actually using some of these as prototypes in Texas, fishing in the shallow sport owners tournament with Chad a few weeks ago, and Brie, and this really worked very, very well for flounder, trying to catch a flounder.
Well, in murky water so many times, that the addition of the iridescence, the glitter that they put in here in several of their really iconic favorite patterns of design just hits it out of the park. That murky water, that will attract a bite.
Yeah, and you got the 5-inch jerkbait, you got the shrimp, you got curly tails, a variety of different shapes and sizes. Last but not least, Ray, we've got the Fenwick Elite Bass plug rod, two-handed plug rod, a one-handed plug rod. Why don't you tell everybody real quickly?
Well, just super lightweight. You know, when you're casting so many times in a day, especially inshore or freshwater, weight really matters. Titanium frames, zirconium inserts. I mean, just the best of the best.
It's the Powerlux composite graphite rod with a locking Fenwick rear Fuji design. Works really well. Bait casters are everything. That's what all the fellas in Texas. Thank you so much for filling in for Dave.
No problem.
Bree, we got to keep moving. I was talking about Chad. I know he's listening.
Yes, we do. All right, the Lower Coast region has a lot going on this weekend with some redfish and billfish action in the mix. So let's have a sit down with Captain Chad Kinney to discuss. Go for it, Chad.
So I love this time of year. It's getting into the prime time season from here to about mid-October. in my opinion, we get better weather patterns and fish start really turning on everywhere. Just for a quick note, August 5th and 6th, the TIFF tournament's going to be out of South Padre Island. I'll be down there fishing the offshore division out of the Bam Bam, so it's a great tournament for family inshore and offshore. Talking about inshore, everything's been kind of hitting, so I don't know where to start, but we're going to start with the trout fishing. Still remaining really, really good as these fish are holding in deeper water and the drop-offs on the lower coast. If you're out of Corpus Christi there, out in the wells there, they're really holding around those wells there. Also along drop-offs and around long bars or reefs are still producing. And the redfish are going, still holding really good, and there's some bigger ones out around the jetties, some big bulls and some oversized there around the jetties and the cuts there. Talking about the trout fishing, we've been losing some live croaker. This will last here for another month or two. The bite will be good, free line live croaker, and also using the saltwater assassin sea shad on the drop-offs along those grass beds and sand pockets in that 4 to 5 foot of water. So if you're fishing Corpus Christi Bay in those wellheads, maybe put a chatterweight on there. You're a little deeper out there. Live croaker, free line those around there for some good trout action. In the lower area here around Mansfield and South Padre, that 4 to 6 foot of water, that's where they're holding. Live bait, like I said, working really well. And when you're working those saltwater assassins, that magic grass I like in color and anything they got chicken and chain with a slower retrieve, they'll bounce off those grass beds in your sand pockets, and you're going to feel a good thump and had some good solid fish. I got a picture here of a big old trout over 30 inches released by Michael Hervey. They're fishing out of Arroyo City there right between South Padre and Fort Mansfield.
Wow.
Heck of a good one release. So moving over to the redfish have been really above average this year. I think, especially down here, but the dredging of the jetties really helped a bunch. There's plenty of them, holding up in the flats and up shallow early, like I talked about, and then as the day goes on, they start moving to that deeper water. Top water early up in shallow works really good if there's not too much grass. Use that mirror lure Top Dog Junior. And then also the saltwater sea shad with the paddle tail up shallow works good. When they start heading out deeper, move over to that saltwater assassin, like that magic grass in color, just a straight the tail there on that, and just bump it off the grass bed, sand pockets. You'll be in that probably 3 foot of water, waist deep water area like that. There's been some big bull redfish, like I mentioned, in the East Cut, actually out of Port Mansfield, and at the lower coast jetties. They're starting to show up like that. I'm expecting those to really start turning on here after a bit. These bigger fish like that, you can fish out the banks, and you use some fish bites on the bottom, works excellent for that. If not, you got some fresh cut mullet, works also well on that stuff here. Got a great picture of the Butler family. You've known these guys for a long time. These guys were fishing, just taking the kids to the beach and having a family day, and look at these monster bull redfish.
That's what happens when you go to the beach in Texas, guys. Holy cow.
Everything big.
Yeah, holy shnikes. I looked at that, I was like, oh, wow, that's some monsters. So that was just right there in the East Cut of Mansfield. So moving to offshore, it's getting in its prime season right now. Fish are showing up from snapper and state waters, federal waters, wahoo, dorado, tuna, billfish, you name it. It's out there, 300 foot plus. Out deeper past the canyons, kind of where the billfish are at. The shrimp boat season opened up, so guys that like hitting those shrimp boats are out there. It's going to really start turning on. They've been out there for about a week now. Talking about the wahoo bites been really good when you find a rip or any good structure out there. They've been holding some decent numbers out there. We've had some really good numbers pulling the Islanders, rigging them with wire and the ballyhoo. We're using, if you're using Momoy Mono, then just definitely bump up at least to the 300-pound plus for these toothy guys, and then make you check your lines for chafes and stuff like that if you get some bites. Set the drag a lot looser on these. I like using some Penn International 30 to 50 wides. You can land anything on those guys that you need, but kind of loosen up the strike a little bit when they hit it. Drop it back to them, let it roll for a little bit, and then set back up the strike for better hookup ratios. We landed 9 wahoo before 12 o'clock this Saturday, which is really good for the Gulf of Mexico. You got a first-time client, got a picture of a wahoo. This is Steve Salas, and we had 9 on that trip there.
Nice.
Yeah, moving over to bill fishing. I said bill fishing's hot as heck too. Guys from Port A are really tagging loose heck out of them. TIFF's coming up, so I plan some really good numbers there. But seeing really good numbers from sailfish to whites to blues. Seeing numbers kind of even in shallow. There's a lot of bait in shallow, guys, so don't run past the fish. From the canyon, the fireman's hole, small hole. Definitely pull some Islanders rigged with their ballyhoo. It's working really well in the spread. We've been doing great. Pink and white's been really hot lately. And look at your Garmin sounder for your bait balls to be able to stay on those fish. If you're feeding on that bait, stay around. They might be down lower, and they're going to come up later, and that's when you start getting all your bites. Blue water's coming in a lot closer, like I said, so don't overrun those fish. You start seeing a whole bunch of bait and some rips in that 300 foot or so. You might want to shut down and try it there. Like I said, TIFF's coming up, so hopefully see y'all guys there in August 5th around there. And I got a picture here. The last thing I'll tell you is a good release here of a white marlin for Tyler Bailey. He was a first billfish.
All right, thank you so much, Chad. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the shallow sport boats hotspot from the lower coast region. Inshore, trout fishing's been good along Corpus Christi around the wells and deeper drop-offs on the ICW. Red fishing remains good out of Port Mansfield and lower coast jetties. And then offshore, the bite on the wahoo and the billfish and 300 to 600 from Fireman's Hole out to the canyon.
Well, those were amazing reports all around. Redfish, billfish, bass.
The guys
it's
were
going
on
off. Summer heat's bringing the heat from the fish. I love it. Ray, thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure.
It's nice to shake it up a little bit. Dave got stuck behind some cows. We'll see y'all next week.
Moo.
Bye.